Happy Monday. Welcome back, Broncos country, to another episode of Let's Talk Broncos. Bree Mason, Zach Seekers, Joey Richards. Guys, we're a couple weeks out from training camp. Quick, off the top of your head, which training camp battle are you most looking forward to?
The center battle. Right
Nice.
off the top, the center battle. I want to see it. Zach,
Zach.
what about you?
Hot take. I don't think it's even going to be a battle. I think Kush is just going to walk right into the starting job. I'm excited to see the Damari Mathis, Riley Moss battle because I am going to gloat and be extremely annoying.
I was going to say
when Mathis
safety.
wins.
I was going to go Caden Stearns, Kareem Jackson. Turns out there's not really a competition to be had there. If you want to hear more about that, you can tune into the Fan Cave with Mario Vitanzi and myself this afternoon, 1 to 2 p.m. Mile High Sports Radio. I have it linked over on my Instagram. Check that out because to end in the show, we got some interesting news from Mario Vitanzi himself. Let's jump into it, guys. We have a full packed show. Tonight, we're going to be doing the Denver Broncos X Factors, and we'll break down what that means for everybody at home. But if you'd like to join the show and comment on any of the news that we're talking about right now, please feel free to do so. Search Mile High Sports over on YouTube or Facebook. We're live right now, so we'd love to see you in the chat. We already have Samuel Castro. He is, I gotta say, set his notifications on. He's always first in the chat. We got to have a prize for that. I think we need to do a little giveaway for the viewers as well. Big things coming. Oz already alluded to training camp coming up very shortly. But we have a couple of things that dropped while we were away. 0 news to basically 100. One of the interesting stories outside of Broncos country was KJ Hamler. My goodness, it has been a long day, and I was saying it today. I will read a teleprompter straight over. KJ Hamler's in for a battle back. This is redemption season. We obviously were hoping to see a lot out of him post-injury, but he had some interesting comments concerning his battle back. Zach, play it for us.
I think only a few people really know this, really, but I tried to leave that day, dog. A lot of people don't know. They don't know the exact. I'll tell you the exact. But what happened? I had my mind set up. I had my mind made. Mm-hmm. And I'm probably like 20 minutes away from my mom's house, and my mom called me as I'm driving. I'm just driving. I don't know where I'm going. I'm just driving. And she like, hey, you okay? And then she hear me crying on the phone. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. She was like, just please be careful. Please be careful. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I will. I love you. I hung up. I put my foot on the gas, and I closed my eyes and let go of the wheel. Something pulled me back. I think it was God for real. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he ain't want me to leave yet. But it's like, I got to that point, and I never should have got to that point. And I think that for me, that was out of my own selfish ways. Mm-hmm. I felt like I ain't never need no help. I ain't never had to need help, really. I always did everything on my own.
Powerful comments from KJ Hamler as he broke down how he was feeling that day, and what spoke to him is what pulled him back. Obviously, a lot of strength and a lot of compassion to be had for KJ Hamler as he's been very straightforward with the battles that he's gone through. Guys, any comments on that? Because I know I tear up a little bit every time I hear it. Broncos Avenue, obviously, thank you for dropping that on Twitter so we could all have a listen to it if you weren't already listening to the podcast. But powerful statements for a very powerful thing that a lot of people go through and aren't necessarily so forthcoming with. Zach.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who depression and all that stuff has touched, my life personally and the lives of my loved ones and everything. I don't know. I think it's good how open KJ has been about all this. I imagine it can't be easy, especially being like a professional athlete, super public figure, discussing it. But I don't know. I'm happy to hear him talk about it some, and I'm happy to hear he talked about I think it was this interview or another one, he talked about how last year when he finally got back out on the training camp field, he had a moment where like he caught a pass and was just sprinting down the field like you do because people aren't tackling in training camp. You can just run down. And he says he was, flying at 21, 22 miles per hour, like classic KJ. And he just told the coaches, like, sorry, I need a second. And just like broke down crying on the field because it just means so much to him to be able to do this stuff again. I know I've maybe been a little pessimistic in my KJ predictions. That's just me covering the sport the best I know how to. I am rooting so strongly for KJ Hamler to prove me wrong on some of my predictions and just have an awesome NFL career and an awesome life. There's no denying the caliber of person he is. That's a very, very high one.
Yeah. I just want to acknowledge how cool it is that he's so open with his comments. So many times as athletes, right? Like as a fan, you kind of lose the human aspect of these people. And if it's not you dealing with an issue like that, somebody that is, right? So it's super, super relatable. And it's a thing that people go through in life. And it just really, really cool of KJ Hamler to open up and tell us these type of stories. Like Zach said, I am so much rooting for him this season. I think he is, I really hope he's in for a big year, but yeah, like I said, it's important. I think it helps people when they hear athletes and stuff like that they look up to. Kids look up to KJ Hamler, football players just in general, for them to be open about these mental health issues because it is something that people go through.
Absolutely. And I want anyone watching who has either struggled or known someone who has struggled, you can dial 988 for help. Reach out when you have a chance to do so. Contact a loved one. Express your feelings. And that includes any of us. If you can get a hold of us, DM us, all of those things. We're here and open available because we have all been touched by this very thing. So thanks for sticking through that. I know it's some heavy stuff. Don't want to get too choked up there. And guys, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and feelings surrounding that. We'll move into, and sorry to be so somber as we move into some new news we've been saying this for a while. Greg Dulcich has been basically a question mark going into his new role, obviously with injury concerns moving into Sean Payton's system. I've called him the prototype tight end just because I think he fits really well into Sean Payton's system. Sean Payton has called him the new Joker, of the team, of this offense. How do you feel about that moniker? What does that moniker mean to you? And how do you think he's going to fit in to the Sean Payton offense moving into this new season? Joey, I'm going to start it off with you.
Yeah, I just trust Sean Payton's vision pretty much. It's going to be my answer here, guys. Like Sean Payton, he's one of the best coaches in the NFL, especially on that offensive side of the ball. If he has a vision for Greg Dulcich in a certain role, I'm going to believe him in it. And I think that Greg Dulcich does fit this role well. My thing is like this whole offseason, it felt like the Broncos were looking for a tight end, and a lot of people were skeptical of, hey, are they looking to replace Greg Dulcich? Is Sean Payton not a big Greg Dulcich guy? The real answer, and this does tell you that, is that no, they just envision him for a different role. That's what it is. They just envision him in a different role than your prototypical inline tight end. I think that Greg Dulcich is in for a big year if everything goes correctly. Not even if everything goes correctly. I think Greg Dulcich is just in for a pretty big year here for the Denver Broncos. So I'm very much excited for it. Trust Sean Payton, guys. He's proven it. He has the track record. There's no reason to be skeptical of a Sean Payton decision on that offensive side of the ball. If somebody can come up with one, please let me know. The guy is almost flawless, putting people in the right position offensively. So shout out to him. I think that Greg Dulcich will do well.
Yeah, it took over a laughable Saints franchise, viewed like the Cleveland Browns or the Detroit Lions or whatever, and was there, I think, 16 years, and something like 14 of those 16, he had a top 10 offense. And the 2 years he didn't, the offense ranked 11th and 12th. So, like to Joey's point, he knows what he's doing on that side of the ball. This is huge for me. This is, I think, one of the bigger pieces of offseason news we've gotten to cover on this show, especially if Payton holds to his word, because it means big things for Greg Dulcich here. Shoot, I'm navigated, or I have the quote open on my phone. Sorry, that's where I have it. He said, "The Joker for us, the Joker player for us is not a receiver. It's either a running back or a tight end with exceptional ball skills, and then you can work matchups. We've had that at the running back spot. Reggie Bush was the Joker, Darren Sproles, and Alvin Kamara. Those were all unique players, not just in the running game, but they had passing game skill sets that allowed you to do multiple things. And I think Greg does too." Now, obviously, he's not going to be like lining up in the backfield next to Russell Wilson, but just being that kind of versatile pass catcher. I was listening to the Athletic Football Show. Nate Tice mentioned how Jared Cook was in that role under Sean Payton and the Saints and had a great season in that role. Greg Dulcich, by the way, coming out of college, was compared to Jared Cook by Nate Tice, Danny Kelly, and some other people, some other top draft people, media draft people, that is. So I think it translates really well. It gets me excited because Greg Dulcich was so exciting last year. And I think like this is a current worry I have with Damari Mathis. Whenever you have young, exciting players and you undergo coaching turnover, you risk those players going bad. You know, maybe that's what happened with Drew Lock, you know, but that's like the one I always think of because it was so debated, but it happens all across the league every single year. So I just wondered if that carryover would be there. Now I feel a lot more confident that carryover will.
Obviously, the tight end room is pretty dynamic. I think there needs to be a different word, especially when it comes to the Denver Broncos, in using the Joker. I think you could call the player an enigma. You could call them dynamic. You can call them a bunch of things. But the Joker, that's NBA. We're going to stick with Nikola Jokic. I think we can call Greg Dulcich something else than the Joker. But obviously, for NFL, it's going to be a little bit different. We were talking about Greg Dulcich when he got drafted and then through the season last year, that his ability to stretch the field and just play in a bunch of roles as not only a target, but as a blocking tight end has been really important for what the Denver Broncos had planned to do last season. This season, I'm hoping that it's much the same, if not more involved. It's nice to hear that they're looking to Greg Dulcich to have a more impactful role. I'd even say the X factor role. To me, when you've got a moniker, you're already setting the expectations that you're an X factor. So we'll get to that too in just a little bit. Cal's in the chat saying, I have takes about tight ends. You don't want to hear them. They're just absolutely asinine. And so we're going to leave them there in the chat. If you'd like to join the chat as well and comment along with us, Mile High Sports YouTube or Facebook, we'll highlight them. Possibly, potentially, unless they're bad takes about tight ends, then we don't want to hear them. Guys, anything else on tight ends as we move into the last piece or the two last pieces of news? Some exciting ones coming up as well. Javonte Williams is saying he's basically ready to go. It's going to be a lot of how the Denver Broncos are looking towards his evaluation if he'll be ready to start this season. We've gone back and forth from Javonte Williams is going to start training camp to he's going to start the season on the PUP list to he's ready to go, but it's up to the Broncos organization to decide whether or not he's going to see the field. I'm not a fan of rushing back players before they're meant to be. I was talking about today on the Fan Cave with Mario. I believe the timeline is going to be whatever the timeline is. We do not want to rush this player back, especially by the skill set and the way that he plays. Risking any sort of injury here is not high up on my list, although I think there's a lot of pseudo professionals out there saying, you know, it shouldn't be done this quickly considering the injury. It happened to his knee, and I think that he's got a pretty good handle on whether or not he's ready to return. The Broncos will assess that as well. Zach, I'm going to throw it over to you first. How do you feel about the potential Javonte Williams return during training camp, and where do you think that timeline actually falls?
I mean, I'm excited for it. I think this is promising news. I heard you and Mario talk about this on the Fan Cave earlier today. You had a great conversation about it. And I agree with him. Like, give Javonte however long he needs to reach 100%. But also, these team doctors know that. Like, they're not trying to shoot themselves in the foot. Like, we got to make sure we have Javonte Williams ready for these June reps. We got to make sure he's ready for these July training camp reps, guys. Or like running back, we talk about how easy it translates from college to the pros because it's not that different. I do think he'll be seeing some different scheme stuff from like the Hackett stuff, like more duo, more pin pull stuff, more at you runs. But that's what you want Javonte to be doing. That's what's been more natural for him from the jump. I don't think he's going to need like the more complicated stuff in this scheme and the passing game stuff. He might need some time in to familiarize himself with. But I don't know. I'm not worried about the Broncos rushing him back. I think they'll put him on the practice field when he's ready to be on the practice field, and not a moment sooner, because they're pretty heavily invested in Javonte Williams too. They traded up to pick him in the top 40. But yeah, we will not know, as we keep saying on the show, we will not know if Javante's Javonte until September at the earliest. And if he's not, I'll echo Mario again. Let Javonte take all the time he needs to get back to 100%. It might not be until 2024. He might be at 90% this whole season, but just be patient as fans. I don't know. It's exciting. We won't know until September, but everything is pointing positively now. So that's still good. We'll keep getting these check-ins between now and September. And it's not going to be anything definitive, but it's just checking the pulse, and the pulse is still good.
Yeah. Zach, okay, so I agree with both you guys in that I wouldn't want to rush him back, but I'm always skeptical of teams rushing their players back. I don't think teams care about these players' long-term health. I think that if they think that they can get good play out of him in the short term, they're going to take it. It's the not for long league for a reason. They're looking at short term. They're looking at this from a year-to-year basis. How can I get myself into next year? That's how this all works. And I always worry about teams rushing players back. Always. I've seen it in the NBA. I've seen it in the NFL. And then I hear these players retire and they talk about it. Hey, yeah, these team doctors really don't have my health at best interest. They have the teams and then my health. It's close to my team and then my health. So I always worry about it a little bit. But I think, I don't know. It's good for Javonte. I'm very, very happy, and good for the Broncos. If he truly is ready to come back and play, this is phenomenal news. It's unprecedented news that he's coming back off a multi-ligament knee injury like he is. I don't know. It's just something I haven't really even considered up until now, where he's saying I am ready. I didn't think that he would be ready until like mid-season. Mm-hmm. It's a little scary. But also at the same time, good for him. If he actually is ready, I'm so excited for Javonte Williams. He's a phenomenal running back. I'm going to say it again, though. A lot of where he is good is determined on his athleticism, contact balance, physical tools. If that isn't back 100%, I would not expect him to be what you saw until all that comes back. I really would. It's just too much reliant on that aspect. He's not one of these guys. He's not like Willis McGahee, where he was like back there reading the holes and doing all that. This guy is gap run right now. I'm going. I don't care. There might not even be a gap there. I'm running through somebody. I'm running through a brick wall. So yeah, it's just a little bit. Calm down a little bit, everybody. That's all I was.
Well, you got to temper your expectations there. And obviously with the Broncos even humoring the idea of starting Javonte Williams on the PUP list lets me kind of know at least they're being realistic about this. And you already said it. What a physical presence Javonte Williams is on the field. Rushing that back isn't really going to do a whole lot of justice, specifically as you bring in Samaje Perine for running back 1 duty. Still, I think a good running back 2. We're going to see what that looks like, specifically because the Broncos have been so steadfast in their idea of a run-first offense. We'll see how that plays out in the preseason. I think getting both running backs some snaps in the preseason, if at all possible, is really important to see how the rest of the season shakes out. And it leads us to the last bit of our news for Russell Wilson. Career best yards predicted for Russell Wilson heading into 2023. Guys, I don't know how I feel about that, because it hasn't been trending in that direction. And to necessitate that sort of result in production from Russell Wilson, you would not only need to see an increase in his efficiency and in his production, but you'd have to see a click in the game in Russell Wilson that we haven't seen for the last handful of years. Little worried about it. Zach, I'm going to send it over to you first. How do you feel about this prediction, and how close to that do you think the Denver Broncos are?
You know, I'm Mr. Get rid of Russ, all that. I think he's got a decent shot at it. especially if he can stay healthy. To get a career high,
This
to
is so
get a career
shocking.
high.
I'm flabbergasted. Zach, continue.
Well, honestly, this has more. You could frame it as me hating on Russ more, because the thing is, the bar is just so low. He's never thrown for 4,300
Oh.
yards in a single season. Um, uh, what he would have to do if he plays all 17 games, let's assume Russ is healthy, if he throws for 250 yards a game, which is not going to have anyone's head spinning, he's going to set a new career high in yardage. Now, I think with his age and everything, I don't know if he's going to play all 17 games. I also think he's not going to be passing the ball a lot. I think we're going to see maybe a more like efficient drop back passer, but I think the quantity of passes is going to be less. Sean Payton's going to lean into that ground game. It was the foundation for him early in New Orleans. I think he's going to establish it here early as the foundation. Plus, it just fits Russ so well. So yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely possible. 250 yards a game, as long as he's healthy, that's super doable. I think all signs point to decreasing his passing production or passing usage rather than increasing it. So I'm going to.
Zach, go ahead, Bree.
You predicted 3,500 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions for Russell Wilson in my quick lightning round from last week's episode. So
I
somewhere
said
in the
no.
middle.
I said it's possible. I said it's
Somewhere in the
possible, but I think no,
Somewhere in
he
the
won't
middle.
get there.
All right.
Also,
Well-
you didn't let me look at his stats. If I looked at his stats, I would have said like 37. I don't know. Go, Joey. Sorry.
Okay.
Listen, I'm not even gonna half step this any, but he's not gonna do that. I like Russell Wilson, but Zach gave all the reasons as to why it won't happen. Russ is getting older, guys. This isn't you don't have your most productive season at this stage in Russ's career. That's just something that rarely ever happens. Like, it would shock me if he just was like, okay, now all of a sudden, hey, this is the year.
Let Russ cook. Let him cook, Joey.
Yeah, last time we said that, the Broncos stadium got caught on fire. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but the last time that was a thing, it did not go well. I think that he will not have the most productive year of his career. I think he will have a good year, though. I think at the end of the day, we'll look at it and be like, Russ was pretty good this year. He was all right. So I'm going to say no, but also say that he'll have like production-wise. I don't know if he actually will be as good as he was in the past, but production-wise, he'll be right in that range. That's what I have that as.
Gregory Miller is in the chat over on YouTube and says, this guy's never heard of John Elway. Gregory, you're going to have to deal with Joey. He's a little young. He may not have been around for that run. So
yeah, I mean, if we're so now Russ is John Elway. I'm just trying to figure out the answers here. This is very similar to Drew Lock is Josh Allen. Hey, we're in year 4. He's going to turn around this year. Listen, I don't think Russ will be bad. I definitely don't. I think he's going to have a pretty good year, honestly. But to say he's going to be more productive than his years in Seattle coming off his worst year of his career, tough. That's something. John Elway was never coming off the worst year of his career and then propelling all of a sudden. That wasn't what happened.
I'm a little concerned with the idea that a player can do that sort of flip. Every time it does happen, the comeback player of the year is quite the story. Listen, if it happens, I will fry up the crow and eat it right here live on the show. I just don't see it happening, guys. I think we're all on the same page here. Let's get into the meat of the broadcast. Who are the Denver Broncos' biggest X factors for 2023? We got to break this down for Broncos country because obviously X factor is going to be not necessarily positive, but the biggest influence for either the game, the team, the season. Zach, you put it really eloquently. Break down what an X factor is here, and we'll get into our picks.
Yeah, absolutely. An X factor. We didn't just choose the letter X because it's a fun letter, right? It stands for variable. It's an unknown variable. It's not like the Russell Wilson's an X factor. Oh, he's an awesome player. That's like some Madden dev trait language. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about Russell Wilson is an X factor. Could he be good? Could he be bad? Who knows? But whichever way it goes, it's going to have a huge impact on the Broncos season.
Joey, give me your X factor for the season.
It's Randy Gregory all day. I don't think that any player is as swings the Broncos negatively or positively the way Randy Gregory does, outside of Russell Wilson. Shout out to my man Gregory Miller. I don't think that any player swings the Broncos positively or negatively like Randy Gregory does. I think that he is literally the difference of this defense not being very good versus it being really good. Like that's just what it is. If he plays all the games, the defense would be damn good. It's gonna be really, really good. Tough defense to beat. If he's not out there, hey, it's questionable.
I love it. I think this is the right answer. I think Baron Browning could also fit. But you look, I think it was just an ESPN article that dropped. Someone just wrote an article, some outlet, on edge being the Broncos' weakest position group. And I totally agree. It used to be such a strength, and now it's like Randy Gregory, when he's on the field, is awesome, but he's never played 500 defensive snaps in a single season. With the 17-game season, there's like 1,200, 1,300 snaps in a season. So he's never played half a season before. That's troubling. Baron Browning, I think high season guy, needs to be an elite pass rusher for the Broncos this year. Again, they need some help on the edge. If they can get it from those guys, that defense, I think, is going to remain fairly elite. If they don't, it could face a big drop off. And if the offense doesn't take a big step forward to counteract that, it could be not good.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, I don't think it's a single player that's an X factor for this Denver Broncos team. I think it all relates to basically injuries. The Denver Broncos had 24 players on injured reserve last season. Big names. We're talking Greg Dulcich out with those hamstring injuries. Tim Patrick out for the entirety of the season. KJ Hamler returning from injury. Cortland Sutton returning from injury. Russell Wilson battling a lat, a hamstring, and a thumb injury, and a concussion. The list goes on and on. I'm going to pick a couple who I think are going to be the most impactful. That's going to be your receivers. Tim Patrick specifically, I think, is going to be exactly what you're looking for here as far as a X factor goes, because unless there is chemistry between Russell Wilson and his targets, whether that be a tight end or a wide receiver, you're not seeing any type of offense happening this year, which includes touchdowns. And I'm sorry you need them to win. Last year was abysmal. It was embarrassing. And the only way you get better there is if you have someone to throw the ball to, because unlike what we saw Russell Wilson try to do in one of those games, you cannot score them all. Talk to me a little bit about how the injuries or the lack thereof could be an X factor for the Denver Broncos.
Right. I want to say that I think where you hit the nail, I'm going to hit on one of the people that you talked about, and that's Tim Patrick. I think that's a great X factor because the Broncos obviously have huge plans for him. Everything that's coming out of there since Sean Payton has been hired, this goes back a little bit now. It's not just that James Palmer report, although that did happen, that he said that he thinks Tim Patrick is the best wide receiver. And if you read the tea leaves, the big names are all Tim Patrick. If he comes back and is that guy, big deal. I think that is a big deal. Whereas, I look at these other two guys, Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. I personally love both, but they were both guys that were on a trade block almost. Like they were guys that were almost in trades this offseason, which leads me to believe that the Broncos aren't as confident in them as I am. So I think that a lot of this offensive success relies on how Tim Patrick recovers from injury. So I think that's a good answer.
Yeah. There's only been one NFL position that has had a Sandra Bullock movie made about it, and that is left tackle. And right now, the Broncos have a huge question mark at left tackle. It's an incredibly important position. That's why they made a Sandra Bullock movie about it.
I'm a believer.
And you know what? In week 17, in week 15, maybe I'm a Bulls believer. But for week 1, I am not. For training camp right now, I am not, because he's coming up. Like, let's talk about an X factor. Again, just left tackle, hugely important position, quarterback's blind side. And Garrett Bowles is coming off a fractured broken leg and is expected to return 8 weeks sooner than the last offensive lineman we saw return from a fractured leg, same injury that Bowles suffered. Not only that, but when that offensive lineman, he was a Giants guy. Nick Gates, I think is his name. Okay. He's a Giants offensive lineman. Okay. Also played on the interior, which should make it easier to come back from. Also really struggled when he came back. Man, Garrett Bowles being 8 weeks ahead of that schedule and then not struggling in a harder position, a more marquee position where Moore's going to be, you're more on an island at tackle. I'm worried about it, especially because his tape to open the 2022 season was pretty ugly. So he was on pace to have the most holdings per game of any year of his career. Okay. Yeah. Garrett Bowles was on pace for the most holding penalties per game than a year in his career. It's insane. That's how bad it was last year. And then he broke his leg.
In fact.
I thought I had to ask that question because I thought this man was referencing Jawan James or something. I was like, oh my God, we can't be doing this on here. Anyways, it is worrisome. It definitely is. I think that the reason why I wouldn't have it as one of my biggest X factors is because they did go out.
Well, that's not mine.
Fleming, right? Like that was a big addition for me. I thought that added depth at tackle. And I know Cam Fleming can play okay tackle now. I have seen it last year. I was a big Cam Fleming hater up until last season. Prove me wrong. I like Cam Fleming as a swing tackle. So that would be one of my biggest X factors. I'm moving it down slightly down my board a little bit. If we were drafting,
I just think it's part of
6th round draft.
But that's the thing. It's not just one, Joey. I wasn't telling you my X factor. I was commenting on Breeze, which, as you noted, is also Tim Patrick, is also Javonte Williams, who is supposed to be the foundation of this offense. Yeah. It's a bunch of Broncos. I focused on Bulls because that was the one you didn't mention. But yeah, Tim Patrick, Javonte Williams, all these Broncos coming back from injury. I think it's nice to go, well, look at all these stars we're going to have back from injury. But I think as we learned from Cortland Sutton, it's not a given. You don't really know what you're going to get. Are they going to be 100% the same guy? We've seen that before. Or are they going to be a shell of their former self? Like if Cortland Sutton was still 2019 Cortland Sutton, I think I would feel markedly different about the Broncos offense.
Right. I like it. I like your answer. I'm just trying to spice up the podcast.
Zach, what's your X factor?
I'll throw my X factor. I'm gonna go. I'm torn. I got a couple I really want to mention here. I'm gonna go Vance Joseph because it will kind of let me mention the other guy. I have not been the biggest Vance Joseph believer on this show. And I just spent the last week in Westcliff. I was alone, bored for a long time. I was bored today too some, and I've been studying Vance Joseph. I watched his Raiders game last year, calling for the Cardinals, the second Seahawks game, and the Chargers game. And maybe I'm just talking myself into it, but I'm liking it. I'm starting to like what I'm seeing from Vance Joseph. It was spurred by listening to The Athletic talk about the lessons they've learned from last year's top 10 defenses, which the Cardinals were not one of, but talking about how the league really is, at least now, front to back defensively. You want to have the front solidified first. And also, Vance Joseph's been incredible at manipulating those fronts and drawing up some really creative blitzes for the Arizona Cardinals because they had no talent anywhere on that defense, on the front or the back of it. And so he had to keep a lot of guys back in coverage to help support him and do a lot of creative stuff up front. Now, I don't think it was like a Giro Evero level. I think Giro Evero is on the very cutting edge of that. But what I saw, like the two big things, we saw him doing a lot of green dogs. So what he would do for the Cardinals, they're sending 5 pass rushers. So everyone is, you've got 5 offensive linemen. Everyone's on a guy, manned up effectively. And then you have the linebacker who's covering the running back, green dog him, which means if that running back goes out for a route, that linebacker is going to cover him. But if he stays in the block, that linebacker is going to then rush the passer and make sure that the opposing team can't get that blocking advantage back, to keep everyone isolated, manned up. He did a lot of that. He did a lot of, what was the other one? A lot of two trapping stuff, a lot of Buddy Ryan blitzes. And I went and I watched the film, I saw it, and I don't know. I think I wasn't giving Vance Joseph enough credit for how modern his blitz game is. And that was my big concern. We were losing so much of Evero. I'm rambling a little bit, but I think it's a big X factor. I think there's a decent chance he's a really good defensive coordinator for the Broncos. And we don't see much defensive drop off. And then I think there's a chance that it goes bad. It's not the right fit. And as Joey has predicted on this show, maybe he's even a one and done head coach. Because I think last offseason, we had this big conversation about, well, the Broncos are losing Vic Fangio. The defense could just crater. And then Ejiro Evero was an amazing defensive coordinator in his own right, so it maintained. Now Ejiro Evero's out of the building, and I feel like we're not having that same conversation, but we should be. Like, just because we replaced the last elite DC with an elite DC doesn't mean we'll do it again inherently.
Yes, that is a fact. I think Broncos. Okay, so I am more on the negative side of this Vance Joseph thing. I'm happy to hear, Zach, that you found some positive news and you are liking him more. I don't really like the Vance Joseph hire. I think that he is in perfect position to be the scapegoat. It might not even be his fault. But the talent has dropped off on defense just a little bit. In that, you should expect a little bit of drop off. Even Evero, if we kept him, I would be expecting a little bit of a defensive drop off. Now this defense is going to have to learn an entire new scheme while losing a little bit of talent. It's impossible for me to figure it out. It's going to be a lot of Broncos fans wanting him gone after the season. There's not a lot of goodwill there between Vance Joseph and Broncos country. If at the end of the season things don't go according to plan, I expect Vance Joseph to very much be to be that guy to appease the fans. Okay, hey guys, we'll get rid of Vance Joseph. I could see that happening. I'm not as much excited about it.
I could understand that wholeheartedly because wins mean everything. We've been talking about that. It's just for the offensive side of the ball. If the defense is going to be held culpable for any of the games that get away by just a mild turnover mistake, although I do wonder how much of that can be blamed on Vance Joseph. But Joey, let me ask you this question. Would you feel the same way, or do you feel the way that you do about Vance Joseph being hired because of what would have been the other options for defensive coordinator?
A little bit. There were other options I liked more. I liked Sean Desai more. I liked Rex Ryan more. Those are two guys that I thought were better defensive coordinator hires at the end of the day, but mostly I would say no. It doesn't have much to do with that, more to do with the history with being a Broncos head coach and also the drop off in talent a little bit. So that's mostly what it has to do with. I don't think that he's going to get the necessary time to build his defense the way that you envision. I just don't see it happening. I think that he's going to be one of the first guys gone if things don't go according to plan.
Yeah, I agree. I will say this though about the Rex Ryan aspect. Rex Ryan, famously known for his pressure packages, what he did up front. One of the big things he brought to the Jets was that green dogging philosophy. A lot of the 46 defense stuff that
you got the guy
is able to come back into vogue.
You could have got him.
You could have had but he wasn't coaching for the last 5 years. Have you watched his ESPN segments? Because they've been abhorrent. Meanwhile, the 2021 Cardinals defense, pretty nice.
Yeah, but he also hasn't been coaching the mid-20 ranked defenses, Zach. That's I almost would rather him not.
10. We're 1 year removed. But where would you say that talent ranked? Would you say his talent ever ranked in the teens? I don't think he was getting less out of that unit. If anything, yes. In 2021, they were a top 10 defense, and I don't think they were top 10 at any position group.
I don't know. I sure he might have not have been top 10 in any position, but like at the end of the day, that still was a very poor defensive output. Like it's not like
top 10 for 1 year.
What about all the other years? Like, where it can't just throw away
have
all
Cliff
the other
Kingsbury
years.
draft him some defensive players.
You need the trends. Joey's right. Vance Joseph was kind of vilified for his time here as a head coach, though, for having undisciplined teams, sort of loose boundaries with players. I don't think that's going to be a problem with Sean Payton. So if Broncos country does try to scapegoat him for some of the fall off, I think you have to look directly at Sean Payton. It is his team. It's not Vance Joseph. So I don't really think that's going to be the main issue. And you really have to look past that. It's been how many years now? I'm hoping that it's not the same stories and people aren't getting rough and gruff with the idea that Vance Joseph is leading the downfall of the Denver Broncos. I think the needle's pointing in a different direction there if it does happen. Zach, I need you to hit me with a lightning round.
Yes, absolutely. There's so many X factors, and when I'm listening to football podcasts, I'm like, oh, I can't believe they didn't list that guy. So I've got to just list off some guys we didn't get to. Damari Mathis, I think, is a huge X factor. We've talked about it a little on this show before with the whole Mathis Riley Moss thing. Like, is he a good starter? If he's a good cornerback, you've got cheap corners locked up for the next half decade. If he's bad, you're in trouble. Caden Stearns, talked about him a lot too. He's going to be stepping into that starting role, it seems, ahead of K-Jack. Russell Wilson, I think, obviously is the biggest X factor on the Denver Broncos. We've just kind of been talking so much Russell Wilson recently. It was nice to talk about something else, but yeah, I mean, however the quarterback goes, the team's going to go. And those are the ones I had that. Oh, and then Jerry Jeudy too. Like, I've been banging that drum, but I think there's some underlying signs that he could become a truly elite, like one of those top 10, 15 guys in the NFL that we talk about regularly, just like changing the game for their team. I think there's a very healthy chance he becomes that this year. I also think there's a very healthy chance he just like sinks back into inconsistency and who knows what, and kind of being a disappointing draft pick. So those are the other honorable mention X factors.
It's a big X factor. It fits the definition perfectly because it could go either way. But I have to say, Damari Mathis allowed 0 touchdowns. Had a little bit of an injury concern, although it was concussion related. So we're not talking about ligaments and bones and whatnot. What I'm worried about here, though, is the Broncos did draft another cornerback there in Riley Moss. What type of competition are you going to see heading into the season? I know the gentlemen maybe aren't too high on Riley Moss. I think I'm a little bit higher than they are just because of his versatility, his size, and the way he plays the game. But Damari Mathis has a little more NFL experience. Do you find there's going to be a competition through training camp for cornerback there with Mathis and Moss?
Yeah, I do. I think it'll be a competition. I think that Vance Joseph
Mathis
will want
wins.
to play Riley Moss. I think that's what's going to happen.
I think Vance Joseph
Zach,
being a positive X factor, being a positive X factor.
You know what I'm going to do,
Bray? Corner who's Mathis.
Because Zach's falling on two different sides here, right? Oh, I'm a big Vance Joseph guy, big Damari Mathis guy, and then I'm going to clip both. And I'm going to play it here on this podcast.
Got him.
We're going to yell at Zach together. Yeah.
I think that's fair.
When Damari Mathis is starting for Vance Joseph's defense in week 1, I'm going to gloat.
Is he going to be good, Zach, in Vance Joseph defense?
Better than Riley Moss because he'll be starting.
What is all of this hate and despite? I don't get. It's only because I said it. Had anybody else said it, Jack would be like, you know what? It was a good point. I like that. I like that point.
Actually, my heat here is directed totally at Joey and far lesser you, Bree. It's all this Damari Mathis hate from Joey that has me fired up. Way less about the Riley Mathis left, but the Damari Mathis hate from Joey has been abhorrent, and I can't wait for it to look foolish.
Framing it as Damari Mathis hate, not Vance Joseph hate, is a little nuts. Let's get that out there right off the bat. I think Damari Mathis is the better corner as well. I just don't think Vance Joseph is going to do the right thing.
Wow, you're not even letting it play out. You're just already set up to failure. Is it so your expectations can't get hurt? Who hurt you, Joey? Because
Vance Joseph in the past. I forget what year was it.
You gotta heal, and you need to let it go and look forward to the future because people can change. And I've lost my mind. Samuel Castro thinks that Moss and Mathis is going to be a battle to watch in training camp. Well, don't we have a treat for you? Let's Talk Broncos community. We're going to be breaking down all of the training camp battles that we're looking forward to as we get closer to that date. We're just not there yet because time is moving backwards and in slow motion here in Broncos country. That'll do it. It's time for Joey's question of the day.
All right, guys. Who is your favorite Broncos defensive coordinator of all time? Bang.
Favorite
Defensive play caller, I will frame it as. Who's your favorite defensive play caller?
You're saying favorite. I'm going Wade Phillips. If we had to, like, say who's the best, maybe I'd entertain, one of the other guys, like Vic Fangio or whatever, who you'll bring up, or Ejiro Evero. I love.
That's crazy.
He'd probably be second on the favorite list. Evero second, but how can you not go with Son of Bum? The Twitter presence, how long he's been around the Broncos, the whole, like, his relationship with Aqib Talib and Von Miller, but like Aqib Talib in particular, makes me smile every time I saw those guys like hugging or like Aqib putting his chains on Wade, all that stuff. Man, I love it. You didn't say best, you said favorite. Wade Phillips is the favorite. Although it's hard to beat the classic Fangio audio drop.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing it. Fangio was not the guy. It's
wish him happy birthday.
He definitely is my favorite. I mean, like, come on now. What are we doing? Anyways, ready to go.
It is Drew's birthday.
Oh my God. Guys, where can everybody find your stuff? I'm not even entertaining this question. It's Wade Phillips and
Vic Fangio. Anyway, you can find my work at JR Drafts. On Twitter, that's where you'll be able to find my tweets. On Threads, it's Joe_AY_.
Why? I'm not looking all that up.
I'm really trying right now to get more followers than them on one of these things. So I think Threads is a good start. We're all working off kind of equal grounds, although Brie, I think she bought her followers.
How many friends do you have on Facebook, Joey?
How many friends? I don't have a Facebook. I refuse. Well, no, we have a Facebook audience, or I'd say some slanderous things about that. But yeah, I'm not on there. You can't find me on Facebook. Yeah, that's where you can find my work. And then just make sure you're subscribing to the Let's Talk Broncos YouTube. Go type that in immediately into your YouTube search. Let's Talk Broncos. Subscribe, like every single video, and that would be appreciated.
Yeah, echo what Joey just said. Let's Talk Broncos on YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Lots of fun things going on over there. That would be the big one for me.
All right, Brie Maces 303. You can follow me on all the socials. I changed all of my handles so they're all the same. I hate it. Somebody took Brie Maces on Twitter though, so I had no other choice. Have a good evening. We'll see you on Wednesday. Talk some more Broncos with you then.
Go Broncos.